The Artistic Atrocity. It was a chilly and quiet morning in the middle of April. I got in the car and began driving over to pick up my friends, Colin, Steve, Frank, and Chad. The reason being was because that day, we were all to drive up to New York City and visit the official Museum of Art. We were all quite excited for this day trip, as the last time we all hung out back in March, at that one basketball game that ended up being a huge flop. We're not going to discuss that though. Anyway, I had picked up Steve, Frank, and Colin. It was in the process of pulling into the Holly Hills neighborhood. Reason being is because we still had one more person to pick up. Chad. We were all a bit worried though, because Chad is not a morning person. It was 3:30 in the morning and was still dark outside. We already knew that Chad would be holding us back, as he was definitely still sound asleep. I got out my phone nonetheless, however, and shot Chad a text message to Snapchat. We were all more than surprised though when Chad actually responded right away. He claimed he'd be right out, and sure enough, he was. It was super odd how fresh, crisp, and energetic Chad seemed to be as he slid past Steve to hop in the car's middle seat.
Ready to become enriched, bros,
said Chad.
Say it's always a pro-wise choice to get our mind gains on some good and inspiring art. You know what they say after all, a healthy mind leads to a healthy body.
It was kind of weird how Chad said this, as last time I checked, the opposite was true. How on earth does having a healthy mind correlate or make up for hitting the gym and eating properly? I don't really know, but with Chad, we had nothing to worry about. He's always really into fitness and cultivating the gains lifestyle, as he claims. Man, Chad, have you actually been changing your bad habit of sleeping late? Colin asked.
Well, kind of. I pulled an all-nighter last night, actually. I whipped up myself a hearty breakfast along with a protein shake to make sure I'm properly fueled up for the big day of art. Besides, this all-nighter is actually quite productive, as now I can reset my sleeping schedule. I go to bed at a decent time tonight.
Next, we hit the road. It was already quite evident that Chad's all-nighter had already caught up to him, as he was now out cold. It was weird though, as even though it was still dark outside, he still wore his all-signature pair of shades. This made it look like he was awake, although it was the exact opposite. The first hour of the drive was quite uneventful. On top of Chad, Frank was also out cold. Steve simply curled up in a ball watching Netflix on his phone with his hoodie up. Colin and I were the only two people who were actually awake and fully alert, as we both made sure to get plenty of sleep the night previous. I pulled over at a gas station, as Steve needed to take a piss.
Right here, G.
I pulled into the parking lot of Royal Farms off the highway. We waited in the car while Steve went to the bathroom. I was checking Snapchat and had found myself to be on the all too well-known Snap Map. Everyone on it I had added, besides the people I was with, obviously were still asleep due to the Z's icon above their Bitmoji. One person's Bitmoji in particular, though, caught my eye. It belonged to Herbert. Herbert Ernie, that was. As of the current moment, he was still sleeping, but in the blink of an eye, the Z's icon above his head went away, indicating that he was now awake. He was currently at his house, but the green now icon below his Bitmoji meant that he was checking Snapchat as of the current moment. I panicked and went to switch off my Snap Map. Looking back on it, it was stupid of me to leave my location turned on in the first place. But anyway, I went and turned it off. But unfortunately, it was too late. I began receiving a Snapchat FaceTime call from Herbert. I reluctantly picked it up. Herbert appeared to be still lying down in his crusty bed. His hair was a mess and his chubby triple chin encircled his entire face, due to him being all curled up in his blankets. He also held a cup of Morning Joe in his other hand, but held it sideways so he could sip it while still lying down. This resulted in hot coffee spilling all over his greasy face. He looked like an absolute zombie, but sounded more energetic than ever before. Here's our exact conversation.
Hello, Nick. Rising early?
Herbert, what are you calling for?
I just woke up and we're skinning the Snap Map. It seems like you boys are heading for a road trip. Where to?
Oh no, Herbert. We're going up to New York today to visit the official art museum. You are not invited.
Nonsense. Beautiful art is my middle name. I'm the epitome of it. My name is Ernie, the art connoisseur. And it is my sole honor and duty to ensure that each and every work of art in the museum is squeaky clean to perfection. Now, I say I'll meet you lads up in the Empire City. From there, we will tour the museum in style, like cussy lads would. But I will warn you now, a lot of that art in that museum is rotten and is in desperate need of enrichment, and that is where I come in. I can bring up my cleaning kit and give each and every piece of art a good scrubby.
No, Herbert. All you're gonna do is ruin things like you always do. Just stay home and get out of our hair for once.
It's too late, boys. I'm already coming up. But don't fret, I like to keep a very low profile and work my magic undercover. You won't even know I'm there.
Oh, no, Colin said. Herbert is nothing but trouble.
Yeah, but I think that Herbert will be fine. He knows a lot about after all?
Mentioned Frank, who is now awake. This is no surprise. Frank was always known for being pro-Herbert, and this proved it. Guys, don't worry. Herbert is broke and won't even be able to get a ticket into the museum, and the security working there is very top-notch, meaning that if he does somehow to infiltrate his way inside, he'll be arrested on the spot. Yeah, I guess you do have a good point, Colin replied. Just then, Steve had arrived back from the bathroom and we got back on the highway. By now, the sun was rising above the eastern horizon, lighting up the inside of the car. Chad was still asleep, but people like Steve were now becoming more energetic.
Let's get it, man. I'm finna be securing the bag today, G.
What do you mean by that, Steve? How would you be doing that? We're going to an art museum, Colin replied.
Don't you know, man? These paintings in the museum be worth millions.
You're not intending on stealing, are you? That's a federal crime.
Man, we'll see. But another thing that I can do is take a picture of them before going on home and reprinting them out. Then I can get it framed before cashing out.
Steve, that's not gonna work. They have ways of verifying paintings to ensure they're real.
Man, shut the fuck up. You sound just like my ops right now. Always trying to whine and screw shit up.
The next 2 hours of the car ride were uneventful. Pretty soon, we were in New Jersey and crossing over the bridge that goes over the Hudson River. We could see the New York City skyline in the distance now, so we were obviously getting close.
All I see is a skyline of a melted goddess.
It had just been over 3 hours of solid driving at this point, but Chad was just now awakening from his slumber.
Oh, what a good morning for some mind gains in Richmond. What did you bros say?
By now, it was getting a bit later in the morning, so a bit of rush hour traffic was building up on the bridge. It never got to the point of being bumper to bumper, but we were traveling extremely slow. I, for whatever reason, took a glance down at the wide river below. As I did, my eyes immediately landed on a tiny little dot. It seemed to be something floating out in the middle of the river. I had no clue what it was. It was too tiny to be a boat, and too big to be a miscellaneous object. Luckily, Frank had a pair of adventure binoculars that he got from an arcade. I had no idea why he had these. It was quite strange. I took them from him and peered through them to see what was floating down the river. My heart skipped a beat when I saw not what it was, but rather who it was. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. I could tell due to the ultra crazy hair along with the protruding potbelly sticking up 5+ feet in the air. He was lying down on one of those inflatable pool floats. He wore swim trunks and was shirtless, revealing his pale, greasy flesh. The rays of sun then reflected off his belly, practically blinding me on the spot. Luckily, I was okay. But Herbert wore a pair of shades and was using his arms to do some sort of backstroke up the river and towards the city. I had no idea how in the world he backstroked his way up the coast that fast. That's hundreds of miles. Oh no, this is bad, 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 Colin mentioned, and I don't blame him. Guys, remember, Herbert doesn't have a ticket to the museum. He will not be able to ruin the day. Let that fact give you all some peace of mind.
Yeah, man, quit your bitching. It's fine,
said Steve. But unfortunately, this would not be the case. 10 minutes later, when we found ourselves cruising through the lit-up streets of Times Square, Chad insisted we have the windows rolled down for some extra chill bro vibes, as he referred to it as.
Man, I can smell the bills already,
Steve proclaimed as I parallel parked along the street. We got a very good spot, as we literally happened to be right outside the museum.
I say we head inside, bros,
Chad said. And that we did. Once we made our way into the main lobby, a worker greeted us. We showed him our tickets and we entered the exhibits. The time was currently around 10 in the morning, meaning we had roughly 3 hours of time to tour the galleries. We started with the painting exhibits. We entered our first room, which was simply involving a bunch of Renaissance-style paintings from that time period. It was quite interesting and all, but people like Chad seemed to be in total awe. I watched as he slowly pulled off his sunglasses and stared at a painting of a bowl of grapes. That was literally it, just a bowl of grapes. Steve, on the other hand, was inspecting the paintings in super close detail. He was also on his phone, looking up the paintings to see how much their value was, as he claimed. Frank, for some reason, was now lying on the ground, potbelly sticking up far and wide. Frank, get up from the ground, you're gonna get stepped on, Colin warned, as a man almost tripped over his belly. Hey, watch it, punk!
Oops, sorry, I was just trying to really soak in the ceiling. Bryce, man, why can't I take your stupid ass nowhere without you being a fucking pea-brain?
Said Steve. Okay guys, that's enough. Let's move on to the next exhibit. We did just that. The next few exhibits were really nothing too special. Just a bunch of random artwork from artists whom I had never seen in my life or even heard of them before. They were pretty cool nonetheless, however. Soon, we pretty much finished looking through all the painting exhibits, It was time to go and look at the all-fabled masterpiece marble statues from ancient Rome. We all stepped into a windowed hallway where all the statues were held at. The hall had plenty of natural light shining in, along with a high ceiling with impressive landscapes and portraits painted up top. We would start at the end where we're on, and slowly but surely make our way all the way down to the other end. The statues were extraordinarily impressive to gander at. It's hard for me to imagine the sheer time and dedication that was put into these sculptures over 2,000 years ago.
Man, these shit's a lit bitch.
Believe me, I could not agree more. Chad took not his phone, but an actual travel camera and began snapping some photos. He was then tackled to the ground, NFL style, by security. Son, these statues are over 2,000 years old. No flash photography. It'll ruin them.
Oh no! My bad, bro, my bad!
Chad replied as he stood up, but there was a bit of a catch. I could see a mysterious piece of what appeared to be saran wrap hanging out from his red football Letterman jacket. Chad, what's that? I asked. Chad didn't even say a word. He looked down and gasped before jogging off to the bathrooms. He reemerged 5 seconds later, looking fresher than ever.
Ready to proceed,
he said, and we did just that. We continued making our way down the hall of sculptures. I then heard a loud crash sound come from behind me. I turned around to see the head of a Julius Caesar sculpture now shattered all over the floor, with Frank Worming standing over it. Apparently, as we were walking, Frank accidentally bumped into it with his potbelly, knocking it onto the floor. Frank, that's millions of dollars you just destroyed, Colin stressed. I knew for a fact that Frank didn't have anywhere close to $1 million saved up. Hey! The security guard shouted. Frank took off as fast as he could, which was not very fast.
It was an accident!
Frank squeaked as he ran away, disappearing into the maze of art galleries. Security chased after him. What are we gonna do about him? Colin asked.
Man, who gives a fuck? We'll worry about possessing it. For now, we gotta finish getting through this art gallery so I can focus on my artwork, Hans G.
The next 10 minutes were pretty uneventful for the rest of us. We spent that time making our way down the rest of the sculpture hallway until finally, we reached the other end of it. That's when we saw it, the massive marble sculpture that stood upon a massive 11-foot-high block. One might think that this would be quite the marvelous sight to behold, but believe me, it was far from. A decently sized group of people had gathered around the sculpture, but not because it was impressive, rather because of how off it looked, if you know what I'm talking about. The statue is fat, no, like, really. It's made out of marble, just like all the other ones, but literally had a potbelly, along with a prominent triple chin. Its entire body seemed to have been formed like a pear. Its face had a look of ultra crazy in it, with a crazy tornado hair as well. Its face also seemed to be quite mischievous, like it was up to something. People muttered to each other in confusion as they tried to figure out what in the world the sculpture was. I squinted my eyes and examined the art a little closer. I was then able to see who it was in disguise, although their disguise was not all too effective. It was no one other than Herbert Ernie himself. Colin recognized him too. We could tell because the way the lighting in the room was cast onto him, you were able to see his every feature. His crazy eyes, they were visible. His potbelly, it was visible. His triple chin, all too visible. The craziest part of it all was just how still he was able to stand. If it weren't for Colin and I recognizing his ridiculous attempt at disguising himself, we may have actually thought it was a legit sculpture, though emphasis on might. Herbert stood in a very triumphant pose. He had both feet spread out with one hand on his hip. The other hand or arm was aimed toward the ceiling, along with his face. He really did seem quite proud of his current state of being. Even though his face was pointed up though, I could still tell that he was looking directly at Colin, Chad, Steve, and I in a very creepy way. Craziest part of this is how the security guards in the area didn't even bat an eye. Everyone in the area was baffled to say the least, and all looked extremely confused. Just then, Herbert fucked up and blew his cover. My heart skipped a beat when I witnessed his plump right arm move away from his hip and slowly move back. Oh no, Colin said dreadfully, and I don't blame him. The reason being is that Herbert was now going in to scratch his ass crack. We all watched in disbelief as he did this. The marble cracked as he moved his hands up and down those cheeks. Then it revealed the pale butt cheeks underneath. What the fuck? A man shouted. Guys, let's get out of here now, I insisted.
Wait a minute, I don't like this.
The four of us began heading back down the hallway, the way we had come from. However, Herbert took notice of this, and then he turned his entire marble-covered body to face us.
Keep on with the mirrors and infest fear.
food. You may be thinking that Herbert was talking about us, but that wasn't the case. Rather, he was likely referring to the loose cheeseburger that Frank had in his hand. I had no idea where he got that cheeseburger from, as he hadn't had it previously, not to mention the fact that food isn't even allowed in the museum in the first place. Though we had far bigger problems to worry about, however, than Frank breaking the food rule, Herbert had now hopped off of his stand and was making his way right for us. Only now, the marble had all cracked and fell off, revealing what was truly underneath. "Oh shit, come on guys, we gotta run!" Colin exclaimed. Reason being was because underneath the marble, Herbert wore nothing but an ancient Roman-style grape leaf. You know, the kind that covers your private parts and all. Everybody in the vicinity screamed and frightened fled. Even the security guards ran off. That's just how traumatizing the scene before us was. That then left only Herbert and us in the now empty hall. A cheesy grin slowly formed on Herbert's face upon him realizing this, revealing not teeth, but rather one of those plastic vampire fang sets you win at Halloween parties and such.
Get ready, boys. It's almost time to be cleansed by my blubby,
Herbert exclaimed as he began jiggling his exposed potbelly back and forth, as if it was some sort of ritual dance.
But first,
Herbert then pulled down a toilet paper scraper out of nowhere and slathered on a liberal amount of Dawn dish soap before walking over to a quite famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci.
don't worry now, lads. This soup is ducky friendly.
"Herbert, stop!" Colin and I both shouted, but it was no use. Herbert took the soap-covered toilet scraper and began vigorously scrubbing against the painting. When he was finished, the painting wasn't even recognizable anymore. What a shame. Thousands, possibly millions of dollars gone, all because of Herbert's dumbass delusion.
Anyway. Oh, fuck my fam!
The four of us panicked as Herbert began running toward us at an exceptional rate. I don't know why we were worried though, as Herbert ran like a snail, 3 miles per hour at most. Our relief was short-lived though, as Herbert then proceeded to ball up like a roly-poly and rolled down the hallway after us. Steve, Colin, and I simply moved out of the way, but Chad had other plans.
Let's run, Reeves!
But Herbert's roll was faster than Chad's run. I grabbed Chad by the wrist and pulled him aside before allowing Herbert to roll all the way down to the other end of the hallway towards a giant window. He knocked over sculpture after sculpture after sculpture on his roll until finally the inevitable happened. Herbert screamed as he rolled right through the now shattered glass and out the window. The four of us ran over and looked outside. We were on the 3rd story of the museum, so Herbert fell quite the considerable distance. Luckily, he didn't damage any property or hurt anybody when he landed. He did, however, land at an empty parking spot along the street that somebody was just about to parallel park in. "Oh, come on! I was just about to park there, fat ass!" the now pissed driver shouted at Herbert.
Sorry, buddy. This spot is already taken.
"Oh, man," I said with a huge sigh of relief. "Glad he's gone." "Yeah, but look," Colin replied, referring to the hallway, now full of decimated statues from what Herbert had done. Just then, we heard the sound of some security guards making their way back, and boy did they sound angry. We all just decided to flee the scene. We didn't want to stick around to possibly be accused for what we most certainly didn't do. I honestly did not know how in the world the museum would pay, let alone replace, all the broken sculptures. But we just decided not to worry about that. "Guys, let's just keep a low profile for the rest of our time here," Colin told us. "We don't want any more trouble." After we left the sculpture hallway, we made our way back to the rooms containing the painting exhibits. We ultimately just decided to go down to the 2nd floor and check out the all-famous Persistence of Memory painting, painted by the artist Salvador Dali in 1931. Going to see this painting in particular was a mistake though. This because as soon as we walked into the painting's room, Steve's face lit up with a mischievous look of excitement. "Steve, no. Don't you even think about it. This painting's worth over $100 million. Stealing it would likely be a federal crime."
That be the point, G. But don't worry though. Them fans won't do shit.
"Steve, I would highly reconsider," said Colin, but Steve didn't listen. He was now in the back corner of the dimly lit room and had his hoodie up. He was also in the process of putting on a ski mask along with a pair of white latex exam gloves. It was weird. It was almost as if he was actually planning on stealing this painting. Everyone else in the room was so enroped in soaking in the piece of art that they didn't yet take note of Steve's suspicious behavior.
Man, just watch. Once I bring this bitch home and cash it out on Craigslist, I'm gonna be pulling up to school in a Bugatti. Besides, I'm without a doubt the stealthiest motherfucker around.
Then, without any hesitation, he went in, but not before turning on some uncatchy rap music on his phone. Quite the opposite of stealthy, if you ask me. He then swooped in front of all the spectators and snatched the painting off the wall before booking it away from there. The entire room gasped in disbelief. I don't think any of us could comprehend what had just happened, Before we knew it, a loud alarm began sounding off over the museum intercom speakers. "Yup, that's it," I said. "We're done here." Colin and Chad agreed. The three of us made our way down to the first floor, or the main lobby of the museum. The entire place is now engulfed in complete chaos, likely from a combination of what Herbert and now Steve had done, though probably mostly Herbert. Before we left, however, I had to use the restroom real quick. Colin and Chad waited for me outside. When I stepped into the men's bathroom, I found it to be empty. However, there was one stall door that was shut. The weird part about it, though, was that there were no feet present inside the stall. I didn't really think much of it until I saw the very tip top of a dirty blonde faux hawk sticking up from the top of the stall. I then heard a faint I then knew who it was. "Come on, Frank, it's time to go," I said. He then came out of the stall. I directed him to go and wait outside with Colin and Chad whilst I did my business. Once I was finished, I went back out into the lobby and met the others. When we stepped out onto the street, we could see quite the unfortunate sight of Steve being escorted into a police car. I kind of felt bad for him, but he was getting what he deserved. Luckily, the all-famous painting wasn't damaged. Colin, Frank, Chad, and I all made our way back to the car, but then Chad stopped us.
Not so fast now, bros. We wouldn't want to call it a day just yet, now would we? I say we mosey our way on over to Bibbers, some post-art grub to fuel our mind gains.
Bibbers was a simple burger restaurant located in New York City. "Yeah, sounds like a good plan to me." "Same," Colin agreed. Next, we all got in the car and began driving over to Bibbers. We then passed by the part of the museum that Herbert rolled out of the sculpture hallway from. We looked up at the still broken window. We then noticed something rather alarming. Herbert was no longer anywhere to be seen. The parking space he had occupied earlier was now occupied by a vehicle. Hopefully the police arrested him too," said Colin. "Yeah, though either way, we're probably in the clear, but unfortunately this would not be the case." 10 minutes later had passed of us driving through downtown. We then parked outside of where Bibbers was. Chad is practically bouncing off the walls at this point. He was so excited.
All right, bros. I say we stroll inside and order ourselves a proper meal of champions.
I ordered the double cheeseburger with fried pickles, and Colin ordered a chicken sandwich. Chad got the triple bacon cheeseburgers with french fries and onion rings. He also got a large chocolate milkshake to wash it all down. Finally, there was Frank, who got the nacho cheese-filled hot dog, which looked disgusting.
"Chew time, bros,"
said Chad. Frank squealed yet again. We were all enjoying our food and having a relaxing time. We took peace of mind knowing that the trouble back at the museum involving Steve, and especially Herbert, was now in the past. We spoke too soon, however, as just then, Ernie the art connoisseur came strolling on in through the main doors. He looked even crazier and seemed to be more energetic than ever before. He no longer wore the grape leaf from earlier. Rather, now he was dressed like a full and complete Roman emperor from the ancient days. He wore the sandals, the red and white robe, along with a little leaf headband as well, which made him look even more ridiculous.
After liberating that pesky art museum with my artistic genius, a nice hearty meal is exactly what the artist wants,
Herbert proclaimed. "Herbert, you didn't liberate anything. You just ruined everything. Now leave before I call the cops. You're gonna be in huge trouble."
Nonsense! Step aside now,
said Herbert as he pulled up a chair at our table. We were now all super cramped now that Herbert was here. Super uncomfortable too. We just ate in the awkward silence for the next 5 minutes. Herbert didn't make a sound or move a muscle. He just sat there, staring into space. His wide mouth hung loosely open, allowing all the drool to flow out like a river onto the table. "Oh, Herbert!" Colin exclaimed in frustration. The reason being was because his entire chicken sandwich was now soaked in Herbert's drool. The weirdest part that didn't make any sense though was that Colin's sandwich was elevated on a plate, meaning theoretically it should have been safe from the drool. But with Herbert, logic usually does not apply. The Ernie drool crawled its way up Colin's plate, almost as if it was targeting him in specific. Just then, Herbert began shaking ultra uncontrollably up and down. It was almost like there's an invisible hand that held him and was using him like a shake weight.
Crispy fries!
Herbert said as he shook more and more crazily. Just then, Herbert did the unimaginable. His eyes popped out of their sockets and began flailing all over the place like yo-yos. Next, his mouth turned into some sort of vacuum or suction device as he began inhaling all our food. Next thing we knew, all our food disappeared from sight. Frank was super upset about this, and so he dove into Herbert's mouth vacuum himself. Now, all we could see was the lower part of his torso, along with his chubby legs flailing around. Next, Frank got expelled from the vacuum, sending him flying across the restaurant. Whee! he exclaimed. Frank landed in the kitchen area into a vat of mustard. This mustard vat then tipped over, and next thing we knew, a tsunami of the mustard had all the workers behind the counter covered from head to toe. The chaos wasn't over yet though. Herbert's built-in vacuum then began to malfunction, causing the food, our food, that he sucked up just a few seconds ago, to shoot out from the vacuum at a rapid pace. Hot dogs, cheeseburgers, cheese, relish, ketchup, mustard, you name it, were all being flung around the restaurant at all angles. Everyone inside began screaming and fleeing the scene, as every surface imaginable was being covered in regurgitated condiments. A lot of people got covered in it as well, but luckily we were all good though, obviously except for Frank. We got up from our table and made a dash to the exit door, but one of Herbert's detached eyeballs decided to follow us.
Leaving in a hurry, eh?
He inquired. We ignored him. We burst through the doors and got outside. I looked at the windows of the restaurant. Ketchup and mustard coated every square inch of them. We could still hear the muffled screams coming from Herbert inside. And just then, the cop cars pulled up outside. The police went in, and 5 minutes later, came out with Herbert, who is now detained. He was a mess. His eyes were still detached from their sockets, and his mouth vacuum was still there as well. We were done. We hopped back in the car and began the long 3-hour drive home. None of us talked much on that way back, as we were all still quite traumatized from what Herbert Ernie had done. It was around 5 in the evening by the time we finally made it back. I dropped off Chad, Frank, and Colin before just going home myself. I later found out that Steve would be sent to juvie for a few months to serve the consequences of his reckless actions. And that then concludes the Artistic Atrocity.